Thanks for joining me. This lab session is entitled JMeter Thread Group Lab. After talking about the various thread group offerings in JMeter, it might be helpful to review a little and demonstrate a little. My plan in this demo is overview the thread groups in the JMeter IDE and show how they are implemented in the WebTours Performance Test Project script. Then I would like to select a couple of appropriate thread groups and run tests with them. The last thing I want to do is show you the parallel and sequential use of thread groups in testing. Let me review the lab plan. First, we want to demonstrate the WebTours Performance Test script focused on thread management. The second thing we want to do is select specific thread groups for testing, run the test, and review the results. And the third thing we'll do is demonstrate parallel versus sequential thread group usage. Okay, where we want to start with this lab is to demonstrate the WebTours Performance Test script, and that's more specific to thread groups. So let's take a look at it. It probably has been a little while since you've seen the test script and maybe not even remember much of what it does, but here is that WebTours Performance Test script that we started earlier in the course, and here are the thread groups that exist, starting with this setup thread group all the way down through the itinerary C thread. So each of these elements are thread groups, and they do some particular test. So if we start with the thread group called setup, this is actually one of the selectable thread groups, and it is the one that was designed to be able to run some specific test before all of the other thread groups that you might have in a script would execute. So it executes first, just like the teardown thread group executes last. So no matter what the sequence of events are shown here, these two are going to run in the order of first and last. Setup first, teardown last. So whatever is in that thread group is going to execute accordingly. Now, in this case, what I put in the setup thread group is a portion of a script called cancel flight reservations. What I put in the teardown is create flight reservation. So in essence, what we're doing with these two thread groups is allowing some flight reservations to be removed from all of the users. The actual process is to execute all of the user IDs, start them, and go through the cancel all process. And of course, in that particular logic, there is the ability to be able to pick and choose whether you want to just remove the first of each flight reservation or remove all of them. So in this case, it's set to remove all reservations that exist for each of the existing user IDs that we have created so far. On the other side, the teardown, or the last thread group, would actually create new flight reservations so that each user would have so many new flight reservations in place. I think I set it to like 25. So you could set it to whatever number you think is necessary. This is a way of running processes to remove and clear out all reservations and then put in new ones a certain amount so you know what you have in your environment before and after the test. Now, let's again, I said really wanted to focus on the thread groups themselves. So that's the purpose of the setup thread group, is to run as the first thread group, and the teardown runs as the last thread group. No matter what the sequence of events are here, that's what these two will do. Now, let's step through the others as well. We have one called login, logout, and it actually uses what's called the ultimate thread group. So in this thread group, you can easily see what's going to happen with the user activity. So we won't have any users running in this particular thread group for roughly 30 seconds, and that's what we have specified up here. So there's a delay, and then we start seeing users enter the test. So they start the login process. And what we have is a start where it increments, looks like every other second, and eventually all of the 22 users are started, logged in, and then they stay logged in for a period of time, a minute, and then finally within a 10-second time frame, they ramp down, they log off. Now, let's look at another thread group, the one called register thread group. A different scenario. So you see where there's, again, a 30-second delay, no activity for that time period, and then it starts to ramp up with users, and we get to 2 users, looks like every few seconds, about 5 seconds. That seems about right, yeah. Until we have all of the users up and running, and those processes continue for a minute, and then finally they ramp down within a 10-second period of time. Let's take a look at another. Here we're making use of the original thread group. And all we're having done here is we're running one thread. The ramp up period is 300 seconds. And we're looping for 16 times. And that will handle one user each time, will process in that time frame. We're not setting a specific amount of time for it to complete like we would do with the duration. We're actually allowing it to run whatever time it takes. There's going to be 16 users that will process in sequence rather than parallel. We're using the same approach for some more of these processes. We have a thread group here for the flight changes. We have a thread group for flight inquiry, thread group for flight payments, and we have some utility. These are some utility scripts or processes, thread groups that will be utilized as they are needed to do their function. And then we have this itinerary thread. Again, it's still using a similar approach, still using the original thread group, and the last one should also be using that thread group. So in the beginning, we saw some new thread groups that are new to basically to JMeter, but they are powerful thread groups to make use of. All right, that concludes this part of the lab. Let's take a break. Let's now take the opportunity to select some particular thread groups and execute a couple of different tests. See the results. Let me remove this out of your way, and we're back at the script, and we had talked about the various scripts. You see that the setup script and teardown script is actually active. It's enabled, if you will, whereas the rest of them are a gray looking color, so they're not the same, they're not lit up like the first two, and that means that they're all disabled. That also means that if I choose to execute this script, the only two thread groups that are going to run is the setup thread group and teardown thread group. Let's do that. And remember that in those two, they're not using any special processing, any different than what you would see in the original thread group. If I clicked on fighting or flight inquiry thread group, you'd see it's pretty much bland. You have the ability to indicate how many threads or how many users, how they should ramp up or how fast they should ramp up, and whether they're going to loop or just be a single iteration. And so if we go back to the setup, we see those same settings. So it's just like the original thread group. However, it is intended to run as the first thread group, no matter what else is available. And then the teardown, similar kind of thing, only it's designed to run as the last thread group. So with those two active, let's click on the view results. We have everything cleared. We'll just make sure that everything is saved, and we're going to run our first test using those two thread groups. And I'm going to stop the video at this point in time, and then we'll start up when the test completes. The test completed, and it was successful. We can see in the output on the view results tree, we see the process that ran. It started with the TC or trend code itinerary C, which is the cancel reservation process, and it actually only did 8 users. And then we see the start of the flight pay, which is the process that creates reservations. And again, we only did 8. And the reason being that we only did 8 is if you go to this event, it's a loop controller, and we have 8 in there. Same thing with the flight reservations. We have 8. So only 8 users were processed in both situations, which was enough for us to test. We actually have, if I go to the user input, that actually has 73 users, if I remember correctly. Yes, 73 users. So this is how that input file looks. It has the user ID followed by the password. And in this case, the way we have this set up, the user ID and password are the same. So this is the file. And so basically all that ran were the first 8 user IDs for the FCA. That's it. So if I close this now, go back get rid of that to the script. I can show you one more thing in here. Here is the control event or element for processing that file. There's the file name, flightusers.csv, and it has user ID and password. And so that is what's used to process the data, or to input the data for processing. Let's say it that way. And, excuse me, I can show you one more thing. We could look at the controls outputs, and we could have put in a display for the user IDs as well to see those, but you can look at the login, expand that, and you can see on this login event statement, there is the user ID for that first one, FCharlieAble1, and so on. So if I open this one, it will be FCA2, and so on, up through 8. So hopefully that helps you with understanding what is there. And we don't want to go into too much detail right now. It can take quite a bit more time, but wanted to show that. So now let's just put these back like this. And this time we're going to add the login logout thread. So I'm going to right click there and see that one is using the ultimate thread group. And we're going to enable it. So now what we have are 3 thread groups that can run now. And what's going to happen because of the test plan, down here where there's a checkbox, it says run thread groups consecutively. So if I turn this on, then it would want to run one thread group at a time. Well, the way that we have it currently with the setup, tear down, and login, there's only one that would run, none of them, would run together. The setup would run first, the login logout second, and the tear down thread third. So let's see that in action, and then we will add one more thread group to a test. So let's kick this one off, and we'll come back and see what happened. Let's clear everything. Save one more time. Start the run. And we're starting the setup thread group again. And I'm going to stop at the moment, and we'll come back. The test has completed, and I'm going to show you from bottom up. We're at the bottom of the list, and you can see the flight pay. You can see several iterations of that. It should be a total of 8 of those. I'm going to scroll up a little bit, and what you will start seeing is nothing but TC login, and so on. And those are the processing from the login logout thread. So the last part was the teardown thread, which was doing creating flight reservations, and the middle part was the login logout, and there were plenty login logout because it was trying to keep that number of users, 22 users, running for a total of 1 minute. So that's the reason for getting actually more than 22 login processes occurring, just to keep the number of active logins or concurrent users running for a total of 1 minute. So that thread group actually causes a lot more processing to occur than the other two. Those were simple, just run 8 users and be done. This ran multiple users in a concurrent fashion. And you can see the impact in this output. And then finally, we should get to the start where you will see the login. Come on. Oops. Sorry. Actually, what's happened, I wasn't expecting it, but it did occur. It didn't crash. It did run the test. However, the output is not able to show me all of the output that was there at first. I witnessed it myself. I promise you that in the beginning, it was running the setup thread group, which ran the cancel process for 8 users. It did do that just like before, but when I try to process backwards to see that data, it's not showing it because that was much more data than we should have in a normal test run. The GUI process could potentially lose output or make it difficult for you to be able to see all of the output, even though it may still be in the log. So, without wasting more time here, I just wanted to communicate that, confirm with you that the test did run successfully. We just don't see all of the output data because it was a large amount. Okay, we're already reached over 20 minutes for this lab, so I'm going to cut the lab into 2 sections, 2 parts, if you will. So the last part of item 2 and then 3 will be in the next lab. Please join me in that as soon as you have taken a break. Thanks. My time has ended for this session. I thank you for yours. Join me in the next video.